Hi everybody, welcome to another Divorce Workshop Live series. Today we're going to talk about divorce and stigma. And we have a special guest coming on. I'm just trying to get her on. There we go. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks for having me on today.
So I was just mentioning that we're going to talk about divorce and the stigma that's still around, even all these years and years that everyone's been getting divorced still. But so before we get started, do you want to just give us a brief intro?
Yes, thank you. So my name is Feryial Parvez. I'm a CDC certified divorce coach, and I basically help individuals navigate all stages of divorce from the initial process to life after. I can also help deal with high conflict exes and co-parenting challenges.
Yeah, that's great. So we're going to talk about divorce and stigma. And I'm just going to do a little bit of story of myself first, is that first of all, when I decided to leave my ex, I called up my older sister right before and I said to her, "Would you be embarrassed?" And she said, "Well, why would I be embarrassed?" And I said, "Because I failed. I failed in this marriage. I feel a lot of shame." And then and I was telling you before, and then another story is about a year after, I had a gentleman, a friend who was an elderly. I came over and had coffee with me, and he said, I would never marry or never date anyone that got divorced. And I said, "Well, why not?" He said, "Because you chose to get divorced and you didn't make it work." So these are the things that are still coming up all these years later. And so that's why we want to talk about this, right? These are just two of my little examples. I'm sure there's a lot of people that have a lot of examples out there. So if you want to start and telling us, why does this divorce stigma still happen today?
Well, thanks for sharing. And I want to applaud your courage. You were courageous. You made the right move for what was best for you. And I think that's what we have to normalize. We have to normalize one's happiness. You shouldn't stay in a marriage just because it makes others happy. You have to think about your own self. So why does the stigma still exist? I mean, it's 2025. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, cultural, societal expectations, religion, tradition, and my favorite is fear of judgment. What will people say? And you can resonate with this. And, I'm originally Pakistani, and in the South Asian culture, even though divorce is now being more accepted, there's always this fear of like, what are people going to say? You're going to bring shame to the family. We don't air our dirty laundry. And through my divorce coaching practice, I'm realizing that it's not just the South Asian culture. Every culture does not like the word divorce or being associated with divorce. And I think we need to really change that. And I think people get pressured by all these cultural, traditions and religion to stay in unhappy and unhealthy marriages. And then I know a common excuse is like, why would you want to do that to your children? Like, why would you want to break up a happy, healthy home? And I think we need to change that. I think kids they don't need perfect parents, they need happy parents. And if you're in an environment where, there's abuse, the environment is toxic, there's anxiety, there's sadness, you can't be a good parent and you can't be a good partner, and it doesn't do anyone any good. I think people need to say, mom and dad need to separate, reflect on what happened. And even I know it's hard because I know a lot of people who have been in very toxic relationships. It's the most difficult thing to co-parent with somebody, but you have to put the kids first and you have to focus on their happiness and show them that, look, we respect each other and our number one priority is you. And I think that is a healthy recipe for bringing up kids in the situation to still be happy and healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the other thing that we have to do is we just have to normalize the fact that it's okay to be happy and to take the steps to do that. Divorce is not a failure, and it's not the end of your life. It's not the end of your existence. Marriage is not the end, the be it all, end of all. So I think that narrative really has to be, you need to put yourself ahead so you can be your best self. And I think how we see divorce has to be reframed. We see it as such a failure, but I actually see it as something that someone does they have extreme courage and resilience, that they recognize that this is not a healthy situation for them. And I think that should be applauded rather than criticized. And unfortunately, in society, we still criticize that. And a lot of criticism falls on women, unfortunately, like you mentioned in your experience with that elderly gentleman. So I really think, we also have to change how we talk about divorce. I don't know if you've seen this, but in a lot of cases, you only find out about someone's divorce after they've signed the papers. You have no idea that someone's going through divorce because people have this shame that, oh, I'm going through divorce. I can't tell anybody. I'll let people know once I sign the papers. But that's when you need your people. You need to surround yourself with people that can help you and not try to change your mind, but support you in your decision, understand why you're taking that decision so that, you feel more empowered and you're doing the right thing for yourself. Um, it's unfortunate that people put a lot of pressure. Like I've heard of stories where the parents will say, "Don't do this. You're making a bad mistake. It's gonna look really bad on our family. You have other siblings or your cousins. How are they gonna get married?" It's like this. One person has to be the martyr for the whole community for some reason. And I think we really need to change that. And we need to talk about divorce more openly. I know that in the South Asian culture, we don't talk about it very openly. It's like a stain. It's a shameful thing that you do. But if more people start talking about it, more knowledge is shared and people can understand that there's so much more support out there, and it's just needs to be talked about more. We should not be hiding. It shouldn't define us as a failed attempt. And that's because the way we measure relationships in society is by the length. Oh, it's a successful relationship because they've been married forever, for so long. Forever doesn't mean for everyone. And, that's not a failure. If someone can recognize that it's not working and they're willing to step out of it, again, I feel we really need to applaud that. And I think people also have a tendency to, like, when they get divorced, they want to pretend that love story never happened. You can't erase that. That is part of your life. You loved, you learned, and you grew. And now you're going to take all that and take it into your next chapter of your life, which is exactly what we need to see how divorce looks like now. It's a new beginning. It's a reset. You take the good, the ugly, and the bad and bring it into your new life. And you're going to move forward. And, it shouldn't define you.
So let's just talk quickly about, I just want to mention about the self-stigma part, because that's a big component, right? When you're talking about, I was like what you said, I was an avoider. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to be judged, but I also felt such internal failure, this self-stigma, so on myself. And that's something that we need to talk about, because making sure you have the right support, etc., is really important, but you have to also work on yourself, that you did not fail, right?
Exactly.
I think as sometimes with women, we have that belief system. Like if you think about when you're a kid, what do you strive? A lot of kids strive to get the A's and they strive to be on the team, and and then all of a sudden, you get married and it's not working, right? And so there's the belief system that, okay, well, oh my goodness, I can't fail. I can't fail, right? And then I think for some of us, including myself, I stayed in it way too long, right? Because I didn't want it to fail, right? So I think we need to talk about working on ourselves and not viewing ourselves as failures, right?
That is extremely important. And I think it's also important to recognize that a marriage or relationship takes two people. It's not one person's burden to make sure the relationship works. And I think a lot of the time people blame themselves, but then you need to take a step back and say, okay, but we need to make, two people have to be aligned in their values and the way they want to live their life. And if that's not happening, how can one person take over and just be responsible for the marriage? It's just these unrealistic expectations. And I think, unfortunately, women tend to do this. And I think it goes back to our childhoods. If you think about it, when we're little girls, from a very young age, we're told, like, one day you're going to get married to your Prince Charming and you'll live forever, happily ever after. And then that narrative is instilled in us through storytelling, movies, like the Disney princess movies, like, and if you're,
Rom-coms, romantic comedies.
rom-coms, like novels, like, these epic love stories. And if you're from the South Asian culture, if you're Indian Pakistani, then you have your Bollywood movies where, I mean, the idea of romance and marriage is so crazy. It's like, and that's what you see and you think that's what marriage is supposed to be. So we have this whole like falsification of what marriage actually looks like. And then I find women try to uphold that vision that they thought marriage should be. And they keep trying and they keep trying and they keep trying. But if the other party is not willing to put the same effort, it's not going to work, right? And I think we have to recognize that, again, we have to put a strong, strong emphasis on that. It takes a lot of courage to step out of something that's not good for you, and I think that needs to be celebrated. Like for example, these days, we do celebrate when someone's in a toxic work environment and they have the guts to leave that
Mm-hmm.
job. We celebrate it. We're like, wow, good for you, that's amazing. Maybe that wasn't the case 10 years ago, but for some reason, divorce, we still don't have that same motivation, encouragement. And it's like, why would you expect someone to stay in something that's abusive, that's taking a toll on your emotional, your mental and physical well-being? Like, why do you expect, or even us as individuals, why do we think that's the right thing? And it just comes back to society and what we have been taught from a young age and what we think is, I mean, we really have to define what marriage is and what a good relationship is.
I think your point there is what a good relationship is, right?
Yes.
Because I think we, as you're saying, we all get married and it has all this visions of what it is, but I think we need to also learn or teach our children what a good relationship looks like, right? And I love what you said, like that's like the in our workbook, it's like we have this thing called the responsibility pie. And you have to understand we all have some responsibility, but if I look at my responsibility pie, I'm not the huge component of why it didn't work. Did I have some responsibility? Yes, because we all do,
Yes.
right? So if you can look at that and go, okay, I really didn't fail. I did try, I did try. I tried for a lot of years. So there is that component too. And I also want to mention that for many people that are going through that and they're feeling really like a failure, there's, society hasn't been, just realize you're not alone. I remember when I thought, oh geez, no one else is going through this, right? And my own therapist at the time said, she goes, oh, are you kidding me? Like half the world is divorcing.
That's
One quarter of the people that are married or together aren't that happy. And you've got a quarter that are good enough. So she's like, you are not alone. There's a lot of people out there.
and that's so sad. Like that's the thing, is that because people don't talk about it, you do feel like you're alone,
Mm-hmm.
and you do feel you're like that one lone person who's gone and blown up your life. And you feel, and you do feel judged, you do feel criticized, and people will say comments. I talk to people and they say, oh, if someone finds out that I'm going through a divorce, or I've just gotten my divorce, I'm faced with a lot of criticism and judgment. And I said, well, you know what? You need to set boundaries. Those boundaries are so important to set. And that was your own story. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't owe anyone an explanation. And I think that's what also, I think people are so ashamed that they went through the divorce that they almost allow themselves to be, you know, abused in this manner. And I tell people all the time, you just have to say one thing, set a boundary and say, thank you for your concern. I appreciate it, but I'm focusing on moving forward. And when you say something like that, what is the other person going to say? There's not much left to say,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have to stand up for yourself, and you just have to let people know that I know I did the right thing for me. Maybe it's not the right thing for you, but it's the right thing for me.
Yeah,
And
boundaries are extremely important. Even we talk about boundaries with your ex,
oh,
like,
oh,
boundaries with your ex, but we talk about that all the time. But what we need to talk about is also our family,
yes,
friends, and society, right?
yes,
And normalize it that, as you said, and what I want to mention there too is practice saying that. So
yes. It should be a
practice saying
mantra.
that,
Exactly,
right? So
exactly.
when you're at work or you're at an event or whatever, and someone comes up to you and they're nosy, because that's what people are, you will have already practiced saying, this is, I'm fine, I'm getting divorced, I'm good, thank you, whatever you want to say, right? I always tell people to practice it, write it out, so they can remember it, especially for people that you're not that close with, right?
No, and it's funny, the people that you're not that close are the ones who feel like they have a right to tell you on how you should feel and what you just made the biggest mistake. And where were you before? Like, why is it, like, why do you think you should be telling me what to do? So I just think the narrative around divorce is so negative because like you said, individually we feel shame, we feel the failure. And I think if we can recognize that divorce is not a failure, it's, you're putting your happiness first. What's wrong with that? And I think people are like, well, what does it mean to be happy? That's such a childish excuse. Oh, you are unhappy in your marriage. Unhappy means a lot of things. It could be an unhealthy environment that's been taking a toll on you for years. That's now, and when you have in a stressful, toxic situation, it has huge consequences on your mind, your emotions, and your actual physical state. I mean, you're literally slowly killing yourself because you're not in a good environment. It's like, would you go and sit in a room that has like toxins and like lock yourself up in there and sit in there? Everyone would say that you're crazy for doing that,
Mm-hmm.
correct? But a toxic relationship is exactly the same.
So what are some of the tips like that you think that we talked about working on that self stigma,
Yeah.
because that's a huge component. And if we can start reframing that, is there any tips that you have to help beat these feelings of, it's really uncomfortable feeling too, right? It's a uncomfortable, isolating feeling.
I think the biggest thing is just honestly opening up and talking about it and being real and resonating with, like, you need to allow yourself to feel that grief. You need to allow yourself to go through the stages and recognize why you are taking this step and celebrate the fact that you had the courage to put your happiness before, like, you're not accommodating other people's opinions and needs. And it's, again, it's nobody's business or right to decide what's best for you. As an individual, we should be living our lives to its fullest. And I guess it just comes back to really understanding that I be proud. I recognize that this was not working for me. This was not a good environment for me. And don't define it as an end. Don't define it as a failure. Reach out to people. Use the support. It takes a village. You know how they say it takes a village? It takes a village in divorce. I mean, a lot of times people think once they sign that divorce paper, things will just magically blossom and it's going to be like, oh, I've crossed the gates of hell and I'm in heaven now. Unfortunately, that's not what happens. People, while they're going through the divorce, they're so caught up in all the business of divorce, they don't actually get to grieve. And I think the sooner we allow ourselves permission to recognize that I did the right thing for myself and I don't have to prove anything to anybody, that process just becomes easier. And when we have signed the divorce papers and we're starting our life over, we're transitioning into a new segment of our life, we just feel more empowered because we've talked about it. It's not like I'm saying you have to go out and justify why you got the divorce, but you have to surround yourself with people who understand why you did it and who support you in the decision. I
Mm-hmm.
think you should not keep it a secret. It's not a dirty little secret. This is the time where you need your loved ones, you need your support. And you might be met with a lot of criticism and judgment by people who you thought were your closest adversaries. Well, that's a time you have to set up the boundary. You really have to set up that boundary and re-evaluate, okay, who do I want in my life and who I don't. So it's really, divorce is a reset.
We have a comment, but so good to see you. Such an important topic. I have a couple of clients whose main source of stress is their relationships. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Relationships with others, yes. It's like, I almost feel like the person who's going through divorce, so a lot of time, like you mentioned yourself and people that I've helped, they're so concerned about others' feelings that they forget to take care of themselves.
Mm.
So I think self-care is so important too in this process, is that it's nice that you're being considerate of others' feelings, but you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of anybody else.
I just want to mention too, another tip I want to give too is self-compassion. So it's by Dr. Christine Neff, and if you guys want to take a look at her webpage, is we need to really treat ourselves like our best friend.
Yeah.
And I've had to do that in my journey of 7 years post, is when I start feeling something negative about myself through that past situation of that marriage and divorce, is I've had to practice a lot of being nice to myself. Like, so would my best friend say this to me? Probably not. So just reframe yourself. Um, Mindfulness too, go for a nice walk. Like, um, some people need to go to the gym, that's all self-care. Whatever you need to do to try to treat yourself better, right?
Yeah, and I mean you have to be in a state where you can, because if you can take care of yourself, then you're going to have more clarity, you're going to make the right decisions in the divorce process. And if you can get all that lined up while you're going the divorce process, then transitioning into your new chapter is so much easier and more effective.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any other tips? I'm just looking at my sheets here.
I do. Again, I'm just going to go back to, like, I think it's really important to reach out for help.
Mm-hmm.
You need to help. It's not a battle that you need to fight on your own. And when you're on your own, you kind of get into your head, like you just said, and you might have a lot of self-doubt. And I see this, people go into that self-doubt mode. Oh, maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I should go back to him. And maybe, I can avoid all this criticism by just, it's easier if I just stay. And that's why I keep coming back to this point is I think it is vital that when you are in a bad relationship and you have taken the courageous decision to walk away, you need to then make sure you have the right support circle, that you have the backup, because then okay, I've got my people, everyone believes in what I'm doing, they understand why I'm doing it. It makes the process so much easier. Again, like you said, self-care is very important. You have to take the time to, if you can, get your nails done. Maybe that's going to make you feel better. Go
Mm-hmm.
for a facial, get a haircut. Try to make time to, a lot of times I see people when they're going through divorce, they isolate themselves. They don't want to go out. And sometimes just having a coffee with a friend can recharge you. Just having a few laughs or talking about the good times, it can have a huge benefit. Society, community plays a big role in our happiness. So surround yourself with a good community. Maybe reach out to a divorce coach like me.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of resources and support out there. And I want people, because I think people get so scared that they don't even look. They're scared to even look up, like, oh, what can I get? What kind of a help can I get? What kind of support can I get? And if we start talking about it, maybe if you share with a friend, like, oh, I have this person who could really help you with your finances during your divorce, or I know somebody who went through the divorce and they had a great lawyer. Like, sharing increases knowledge, and that in itself. So again, building that community and talking about divorce, I think, is the most important thing, and obviously self-care.
I think also too is if you think about like when my mom got divorced in the early 70s and I was just a baby, the stigma around then was huge, right? So we've come a long way. We we have podcasts, we have lives, we have books, we have coaches, we have a lot more resources. And if so it is better than it used to be. As we talked about before, it still needs more work to get, because there's still that feeling that's there. But with more of us out there trying to work on this and try to realize that you're not a failure, your this chapter ended, and that if you look at a lot of the people in the world that have gone through divorce, a lot of us have gone to do just good life still, right?
Well,
So
I have seen, and through this process of becoming a divorce coach and like community, like networking and collaborating with other professionals in this industry, I have seen and heard amazing stories of people who came out of really bad marriages, didn't have the support, and now you look at them and you're like, wow,
yeah.
they have they're a like 5.0 version of themselves, not even 2.0. And it's really motivating to see people like that. Okay, they had to go through something really bad, but the growth and the lessons they learned from that and what they brought in from that experience, I'm amazed on a daily basis by people I talk to. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, look at your own story. It's amazing what you're doing to get people so much help and support. And someone very close to me went through a really bad divorce, and I was very involved in that whole process with them. And we didn't know that all this support existed. Our first go-to was like, let's call a lawyer, because that's all we know. So if you haven't had any experience with divorce, and we had a few friends or cousins and family members that had gone through divorce, but no one talked about it. It was like a dirty little secret. And it was like, oh, okay, they're divorced now. Don't bring it up. Don't talk about it. And so that knowledge was never shared. And when I was in the situation with my loved one, we had no idea. Now I can't believe how much resources are out there.
Yeah, same here.
Podcasts, Insta Live, coaches, mediators, financial advisors who are certified for divorce financial planning. I mean, it's amazing the resources that are out there. So again, the more we talk, the more we build our community, the easier this process becomes, and we take that negativity away and we can reframe divorce as something courageous and a new chapter. It is not a
I
failure.
do love the fact that you said courageous, because it's one of the things when I came out of that marriage that I said I had. It took me a long time. I finally had the courage to do it, and that, that's reflective after years, right? But is there anyone that have any questions? Just put them in the comment. Otherwise, do you have anything else to add, or yeah, it
No,
was.
I thank you so much for having me on. And I think like discussions like this can just do wonders. Maybe one person hears us
Mhm.
and says, "Oh, you know what? Yeah, that maybe something we said resonates with them," and starts a new, they start a new journey in their life. So,
Yeah, I think it's just really important to understand that you're not alone. And I know that sounds really cliche, and it's like, but
I
I mean
know,
really, but
yeah,
really, like the resources are out there. You don't have to, spend thousands of dollars. There's
no.
resources out there. We just don't do what I did, or your loved one. I didn't know, and I had to battle that kind of on my own for a while. So that's why we want to talk about this important topic
Well,
today.
it's like,
So
I mean, like what you went through in your experience, and then you can impart that knowledge onto so many other people, and then they can build on that. And, it's got a chain effect, but we need to talk about it, and we don't
exactly.
need to be ashamed of it. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on today, and look forward to having you on again. And take care, everybody.
thank you so much, Karen. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.
Bye.